Jimmy was telling me no. Council, is it okay to call the roll, or would you like to do Karen?
Actually, you should start Karen in first. Jim's got it.
Karen, welcome to the CIB. Karen Dyer's taking David Patterson's place. So, Jim?
This is your oath. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Karen Dyer,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and that I will faithfully execute and impartially discharge
and that I will faithfully execute and impartially discharge
all of my duties
all of my duties
as a member of the Hill County Capital Improvement Board of Managers,
as a member of the Beaver County Capital Improvement Board
according to law and best of my ability.
according to law and the best.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome to your board.
All right, Mr. Bramble, call the roll.
Conlon.
Here.
Zachary. Here. Marvel. Here. Mr. Schweitzer. Here. Ms. Grayfold.
Here.
Hellman. Steyer.
Okay, so Bernice did shoot through, Brandon as a text or email. All good. So, approval or any additions or revisions to the agenda? Approval of the previous meeting minutes from March 4th. Any questions or comments?
Second.
Second by Ms. Freeman, all in favor by aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's what carries. Quickly moving on here, 5.1, update of committees and arrangements.
Good morning. Okay, so we're reporting on the month of March. So in March, we hosted 12 events, which accounted for 14 total event days. Total attendance was almost 1,300 and gross revenue generated from events and parking a little over 50,000 in revenue. Next page just kind of shows some of the events that we had. A few of those to just highlight was Rural King Vendor Conference. They had this was kind of, it was a little bit of a short-term event. They had a lot of their vendors that came in that are putting products in their stores. So this one actually carried a lot of hotel rooms. I know they were trying to figure out where all of their attendees were staying. So we figured there's probably about 300 hotel rooms that were associated with this event. So it was a really short term one, which was really great.
What event was that?
Rural King. And then Indiana Vector Control Association. This was an education group of disease carrying insects. So one of the associations smaller association with room nights it's a type of business that we're going after and trying to find. So it's really nice events in there. Food and beverage, we had our health department inspection. We had 100% no violations on that. Filters were replaced back at house beverage stations, and we also had our machines serviced. Our water lines were starting to develop line. We've got some hard water. And so now we are looking at what it would cost to have some water softeners put on those machines so that the longevity of our coffee machines, so that they'll last longer. I know they're pretty expensive. They're really nice machines, but we don't get the quality out of them after a while. So we are trying to get some quotes as to what those small units would be to attach to the back of those. They do have filters on them, but the soft water would help as opposed to having hard water. Bill, our director of food and beverage, secured a garden plot at ISU again. This is a 100% volunteer effort on our part. These are the plants that we put in the ground over there. We have staff that volunteers time to take care of the garden. And we use some of the herbs and vegetables that we grow in there. We use some of that in the kitchen, and we donate a lot of it to charity. So this is just something that we've been doing on our own as something on behalf of the convention center. We did pick up Cisco as a food vendor. Most of our food is purchased locally. We typically go through B&B, sometimes GFS as well, but having another large food purveyor helps us check pricing, make sure that we are getting the best pricing for things. And sometimes there are, might be items that we can't get short term, so it's nice to have a larger purveyor that might be able to get something that we're needing on short notice. Looking at operations of the building, parking garage was staffed during all of the ISU games, so we had nice revenue that came in through those. We just did the renewal of our amusement and entertainment permit. When our inspector comes out, we just got a date from him. We're also going to ask him to go through the museum and let us know, is there anything that you see that we need to fix, exit signs, things like that. We have our fireboxes that still need to go in the walls, and we thought, if he comes in before we need to get those in, we can make sure that we get them in the right place according to him, so that way we're not being asked to move anything or add anything later. We had some of the tension barriers in the parking garage. So we've got those cables that run on every floor. We noticed that some of those were starting to slack a little bit. I had talked to Brian Poistra and asked him, because we got a quote from the company that did it, to go in and tighten some of them, and it was kind of a hefty quote. So in talking to Brian, he said, really, as long as those cables are at 42 inches, we should be at code. So Doug was able to go out and make sure that anything that was needed tightened, he was able to tighten, and we are in compliance with code. So we'll just keep an eye on all of those cables that are out there. Doug Thraws was promoted from operations manager, or he's promoted to operations manager. He's actually been with the building since we opened. He was one of our setup crew, and then moved into maintenance. And when Mark Ryer took over the funeral home in town, then Doug moved into his place. And Doug has really done an exceptional job with training employees and really filling those shoes. Anytime Mark was out, Doug had always stepped in, and he's been a really good asset to our building. So happy to promote him. Brady met with Lori Elkins of ISU Parking to discuss parking needs. So they're now having a regular monthly meeting so that we know, what their parking constraints might be, and they know when we're going to be a little bit full over here. So we're working together on those parking initiatives and trying to stay in line with them. We did purchase 3 credit card readers for the parking garage. So we're just waiting on Joint to come out and install our extra Wi-Fi in the garage. So this will help with when there are large events at ISU and we want to do event parking, then we can have folks out at the entry gates and accept payment on the way in. And then we just open the arms and let them leave quicker on the way out. So our machines were set up as a pay on exit, but Joint was able to help us come up with a better solution. Then we just went through monthly fire elevator extinguisher testing as we do every month, and a security system was installed in the museum and for glass break sensors in the Wabash Creek function areas. For sales and marketing, we contracted 13 events last month, totaling a little over $80,000. 12 events for 2024 and 1 for 25. Sales is working on 46 tentative events and 20 contracts that are out. Close to about 1,000 room nights on those events as well. The next few pages just show a lot of some of our site tours, marketing efforts, community involvement, and then you'll see some of our Facebook posts, our analytics from website, Google reviews, and such. There's a page in here that has self-produced events. We recently just added, we're going to start doing a monthly First Friday coffee and connections. So we were looking for, networking events for sales to attend, and we thought, why don't we just create something downtown where we have one morning, the first Friday every morning, we just invite folks in to come have coffee with us. It's not, it gives us an opportunity to network with other folks, gives downtown folks an opportunity to network with each other, businesses to come together. So we'll do that from 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. We'll provide the coffee, some pastries and that. And then hopefully after our first one, we can maybe get a couple sponsors to maybe pick up some of the hard costs for the other ones, and maybe be able to put out some of their brochures and literature and things like that, and something that we can just maybe keep going.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So for our self-produced events, I would just make a recommendation. because again, as a convention center, we obviously tourism bringing people in so that they can then, visit our other small businesses in town. I just want to make sure that we don't capitalize or take away from some of our other small businesses. So as long as the self-produced events aren't, for instance, at the same time as we're having a dinner or a lunch, the same time as maybe some of our other small businesses would be, my only recommendation is thinking that this could, I wouldn't want that conflict.
Sure.
For any of our small businesses to be upset because they would be losing business because I do feel that, and I don't think that we need to change any of the self-produced events as far as I think that our New Year's celebration, really well attended, and then what, we've had some other.
We have Mother's Day brunch.
Our Mother's Day brunch as well, and I think that we kind of avoid that, having earlier events. And I know that we're usually busy in the evenings, so,
Yeah.
just I just pass that.
Sure. So do you feel like, so we were gonna do breakfast with Santa and, breakfast with the Grinch. And we're kind of we looked at other places that we didn't see any breakfast with the Grinch last year, and then breakfast with Santa, there's little churches that do different ones, different places, there's all different kinds of pricing in that, and I think what makes some of these unique is the food and beverage that we're putting with some of them also.
Oh, no, I don't think so.
Okay.
From my knowledge, just as long as you guys are planning these events that you're.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, yeah, so we're always looking at opportunities that when we have space that is empty and there's ways that we can fill it, what can we do to create awareness, generate revenue, and not all self-produced events that we do will generate revenue. Some of them are just for the purpose of community. Some might be for the purpose of charity, as long as we are able to pay for the event without, it costing a lot of money. Like to me, say doing a networking coffee doesn't cost a lot of money. If we book one piece of business from that, it's paid for itself, so we try to look at it, in some of these in that regard. And then, if we're able to get a sponsor later, maybe they can help pay for the coffee, or if it's a coffee shop that wants to put their kind of coffee out, we're happy to do their coffee. We do not have a coffee contract where we have to have a certain type of coffee. So, so we kind of left that open so that we've got an opportunity there.
I was just going to suggest that, especially with our.
With like the federal and, yep, absolutely, yeah. So we thought about that, and you've got Rex Coffee, over here, they're serving Rex that when we did our Pepsi agreement, we specifically told them I don't want to include coffee in that because I want the ability to have whatever coffee we want. So that if someone wanted to bring in their own beans for us to brew for something, we can do that.
I do feel it's balanced. If you look around this table, you see how many of us visited local establishments this morning before this meeting. So there is, having the meetings here and having that, again, we are supporting.
Yeah.
Can we, let's revisit that, the monthly first Friday networking event. Is the general intent to bring in business professionals and host book events for the firms that they work with? How are we able to look at there's X number of businesses already in the cities here, probably buying those firms to this. Wouldn't we have already contacted them? That's why I'm kind of like.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is relationship building, because a big part of what we have to do, you might reach out to someone one time and they might not do anything, but then in a few months, they might have something else. And it might be somebody else that's planning an event that they don't think of the convention center. So a lot of this is part of, just trying to build those relationships with the community, with downtown businesses, and not even just downtown businesses, but our sales team is reaching out to some of the businesses that they've been trying to connect with and inviting them to come have coffee with us. So it's really kind of open to anyone. And it's just, an hour of networking, in the morning to just start that day.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right, so looking at our statistics, so looking at 2024, definite contracts, we've got 60 that are on the books from now to the end of the year, which is almost 400,000 in revenue. We've got 17 contracts out, which totals close to 150,000 in revenue, and then 29 proposals that are still out. Looking at 2025, you can see the business that we've booked for 25 and what we're working on in our funnel, and then we're already working on 2026 for a few groups as well. So our total funnel has gone up to about 904,000 in current to future business. And this is just looking at the time when I put this together forward. Then moving to March stats, it just really just shows you number of events we did, attendance by type, gross revenue by event type, and then looking at the next page is January through March. You can kind of see how some of the revenue by event type compares to what we did last year, and then gross revenue by month, year over year. And then Mayor, I know that last month you asked for kind of our pace. So if you go to the next page, you'll see where our pace is. So that very last page, there's a graph that has some lighter shaded columns. So looking at April through December, you can see exactly like this is what's in our funnel, indefinite, firm, and tentative. Now, every month there is a certain amount of revenue that is unidentified revenue. So what we have in here right now is identified revenue, that these are the groups that we are working on. But we have months where there might be $60,000, $70,000 that sales still has to go find that other revenue. So this isn't going to match up until we get to finding that other business. It was hard to like put all of that into one graph. So I just left it with what is identified business, but knowing that the months where we are still short, they have bigger sales goals to try to find more business in those months.
Thank you. It's a really good
Yeah.
last page. On the note of the parking revenue, that's great. Thank you, Indiana State, for that. But also, I like the tracked hotel rooms consumed by month. I think that's a good statistic to show, especially carrying at the CBB to help show the message.
Yeah.
Collaboration with CIB and CBB.
Well, we talked about that.
We do.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
do.
So it's good to see it on the chart. Look, that's today.
Yeah. And there is no pattern. Like right now, there's no trend that says, hey, this month is always the high month. Like for probably a few years, it's going to be up and down in different months until we really figure out where our strong months and where our slow months. Any questions on any of that?
No questions? Yeah, I'll talk with Susan, update on operating budget cash flow. Kyle or Jason?
Well, I've been introduced to Kyle Carlson, manager for firm, and I was gonna say this, but it's not like you guys already know this. And they don't have to tell you that he's really the brains and does all the real work behind the scenes. So, but Kyle sent out the monthly cash flow for everyone, so nothing really has changed, just kind of the updates. One thing I do want to point out, it's something we've been keeping track of since I think the middle of last year, but something that may come in front of the board in the near future is if you look in the middle of the cash flow, you see that river project art space, that $450,000 that the board agreed to do as a ready match last year. We've just been keeping track of that and knowing that may come sometime in the near future. I know that the region just received the ready distribution here in the last month or so. So just wanted to throw that out, that I don't think the decisions have been made in the region, but that may be something that's coming in their next couple of months. They may be approaching you for that amount.
Or should we do that to June once the RDA?
Yeah, either way.
Yeah, I didn't even know how soon it could be in June, and they may not even request it until they're ready, which could be a few months out. So.
And then we see if our works.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah, so it's probably a few months out. I just wanted you to be aware of that because it is a bigger ticket item than you're typically seeing. The other thing, last month I mentioned that the March food and beverage distribution was a little down compared to last month. This year, this month, we received $259,000 in food and beverage revenue. Last year was 254,000. So we're back on track. So again, that's something that we are always monitoring for you. Happy to answer any questions.
Anybody? Anyone?
From a collection standpoint and system standpoint on food and beverage tax, is there anything we need to change to kind of like the county/city standpoint in that? Like, are we getting all the food and beverage tax?
That enforcement of it is under Department of Revenue. All we really get from them is the check. I don't, when you first started out, they sent this report showing up who paid it, how much. But I've contacted them a couple of times, back for it again. I haven't had much luck getting it. I look at my receipts with stocks, establishments, make sure 38% instead of 1% or 7%. So
That's been
we
difficult.
don't have any enforcement.
It's hard. The Department of Revenue is difficult.
Yep.
You know, Dave Patterson and Jimmy have had this conversation with VRBOs and Airbnbs. Are we getting tax revenue from those as well? I know it's not the better tax.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep track of those things. It's Mr. Graham has checked on it several times. I think we are. You know, the health department, when a food and beverage or a food or coffee truck goes to the health department, they ensure that they are on the up and up with the IRS, stuff like that, before they get upwards, things like that. So I think we're doing everything captured all that from.
What about food vendors, food trucks? That would be, well, they have to go to the health department to get their permits, and I think that would be the point at which they can ensure that they're registered for. When we passed the new fee schedule, I suggested that we put in the ordinance that when they get their food permit, that it's required to be show proof of registration. Maybe next time the health department updates its fees and ordinances that.
I mean, would they show a quarterly remittance?
Well, no, you register with the Department of Revenue and do paperwork that they're registered.
Mr. Baldwin?
I believe it's a monthly remittance.
Yeah, it goes with your.
The Department of Revenue is to audit once a year, but
The only way you're not getting it is if you put-
Yeah, in cash, but again, I think in our application, I can't remember exactly, but the health department requires an Indiana tax ID. To go with your service aid application, so I believe we're reflecting what we're supposed to be, other than thinking. Don't make any assumptions, but.
The Department of Revenue. There's two brochures. Excuse me.
Probably your wife.
Well, anyway, they got two brochures, one food and beverage tax for businesses and one that's titled food and beverage tax for government. Want to print those off and bring them into you. What is how the process.
I think that's sales tax also, so it's kind of interesting.
Jason and Kyle, I appreciate, I like how, we've added in the line items for capital and the theater and then tracking what we still have budgeted at the bottom, reflective of what that difference is for the disbursements, so. Yeah, no,
If they would restart giving us those reports, I don't think they can share it. It's confidential information. Confidentiality. I think,
We want the public to know that the taxes are collected.
well,
We're not allowed to at the
yeah,
airport.
I know, we got, a few years ago, we got written up by Board of Council because we were giving the guys hotel.
I was gonna say that we're considering joining the Food Waste Alliance, which might help promote some of our food establishments and bring awareness to that, which might help promote collection of food beverage. That's it.
Yeah, it's just education, on behalf of the health department. You know, city and county, educating the businesses on what they should be doing. I think we do a good job of that, so, CBD, of course. So. I think all is well. Any other questions or comments for Jason or Kyle? Move on to the Larry Bird Museum, Mr. Marvel, Ms. Conlon.
As usual, the museum, organizations is coming right along. Yeah. Going to be wrapping it up, obviously, as quickly as we can. However, there have been some glitches that Terry and I are working through, and Brian. But it's coming along, and I would like to recognize Brady Kearns and Tennille for the job that they've been doing down there. Seeing, there are eyes and ears and hands moving things. I want to thank you two very much for what you did. Just get it open. Get it running, Terry.
I am glad you pointed them out, because they have been just as instrumental in, and involved in tracking on our weekly calls with all third parties involved. We are inching closer to that finish line. So yeah, so hopefully, within the next 60 days, we do have some new window shades. Just again, just to protect everything that we have in the museum, just from the sunlight damage. It's we just are being very respectful of the items that have been donated for us to display.
Yeah, it's really an issue with us as far as that sun coming in. I did, you know, when we started talking about it, but even there's newspaper home on a couch or a table or a chair and see how fast the ink disappears from that newspaper, and when it's coming through those windows constantly, when it's shining. And when we figured out how much that those items were worth, it really became something to stop that sun from shining in on them and devaluing them. And of course, the owner was quite interested in us doing that.
We've obviously have another tourist attraction in town that just opened, and signage was a big portion of that conversation. Will there be signage dictating where we want people to park when they visit the Larry Bird Museum? Granted, I know there's plenty of street parking, but between the Copper Bar, we don't stop their customers from being able to park. I know the parking garage is right there. And common sense says park in the parking garage, but some folks are very anti-parking garage all the time. So I'm just curious if we're gonna do some signage to help drive traffic.
So, prior to you becoming mayor, talk to me about maybe the city installing some signage on the traffic light at Ninth and Cherry, or Ninth and Wabash right here, that says maybe convention center parking with an arrow point, north on Ninth Street. Yeah, Ninth Street. We also talked about some signage out here on the sidewalk, that's late here, so, I don't think Scott, so we might continue that discussion from a CIB standpoint. Yeah.
Go ahead.
CIB standpoint, I've been working with Tennille over the past month on some additional signage things, so I think we'll be able to do that pretty quickly.
Just John for the city sign committee, just get to me one email, and I'll have Brian come it out for, say it opens on a Thursday, you just let me know by Monday, and Brian will see. Thank you.
Yeah, because, we talked about maybe it's some wall bash, maybe a sign being on the traffic light that says emergency on the arrow straight ahead, and then that leads us to either.
I'll have, Brian get them cut, and then Marcus C. Junior will do, we can easily do the classic traffic sign and stuff.
I agree, just even Indianapolis, or even pick off, just, Children's Museum.
Yeah.
Exit signs, just guiding people. down.
Well, may I ask one question about that? Do you know the status of the finding?
I think Jimmy might, you can talk about that. Okay, so we have, a person who's on that board investigating for the Terrell Chamber of Commerce. Something, it's embarrassing to say, something has been purchased, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, in
It's almost been a year.
in 2022, we paid Artsilian a little over $82,000 for signage on 41 corridor. But I think it'd be appropriate to have someone come in and give us an update on that project. If it's stalled, or is there something the city or county or this group could do to expedite it?
According to the information I have right now, it is stalled. The signage has been changed a couple times to match the Terrell Chamber of Commerce signage that wanted for the Terre Haute community plan. So we will do that. We'll have you. The issue is I can't figure out who the heck is the president of Parts League. There's so many.
John Woods,
Oh,
John's in charge.
well, we,
So let's formally invite John to the next meeting to come give us an update on the wayfinding project. And we can let him know the city of Terre Haute will withhold our $30,000 arts grant to Arts Atlanta until we have an explanation.
Because, yeah, the $80,000 is.
Yeah.
yeah, because it was,
And I'm sure they do have it, but yes. So I will gently push.
September 20.
I actually think that it needs some more funding.
Oh, I got 30,000 that they can use.
that's good to know. Because I couldn't personally, I didn't know it was John. We just told me that, I was trying to look through Alley, and there's other people that's on that board.
Is that Robinson or Robinson?
Robeson.
Okay, so, okay, we'll put them on the agenda.
I should have.
All right, any other questions about the Warrior Museum?
With the museum, but we will probably need places for if we have events taking place in the building, that if folks want to wait to go through, they'll have to come outside. So could we maybe look at getting, you guys have any more park benches that could go out, slide down here?
It's funny you mentioned that. I actually have, we have students at ISU with benches, bottle caps. So I could easily get you some of those,
Okay,
but we can look at some permanent benches. as
Okay.
well, too.
perfect.
Yeah. Is there a total amount that's needed? Do we have a site plan where we want them in the city right away?
No idea.
Absolutely.
Once we get the plan and the number of benches, we can go see the city engineer. Make sure he approves of it, and we'll get you guys two benches.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
John, did you want to discuss the? No, okay,
It's still.
okay.
And we are working on the website. I will give an update. So, we are, having a website created with, obviously some of the information of what's in the museum, but most importantly, the hours will be posted. We are discussing having a way for individuals to sign up to attend because the museum is going to have a maximum capacity. And if we have individuals visiting from outside the community and they have a bus of people, we don't want them to have to wait hours to get into the museum. So we're hoping that we can manage and still allow people to come in because I am one of the least patient people probably in this room. I absolutely hate to wait. So again, if we can help with that via the website, that's.
You said they like it with people. tomorrow.
Yeah, there's several apps online where you can put in every hour, every 30 minutes, you can take 10 people, 15 people, they can sign up and then I'll move to the next. You know, there's lots of really interesting programs.
There is an awful lot of stuff down there. It's going to take at least 30 minutes for more group or people to move through that maze.
I would add that a telephone number needs to be on there, so that way some folks who aren't as technologically
Mhm.
savvy can call the request, just because if we do it all online with some different populations, they might not.
Neil is employing, she will have, someone setting at that
Okay,
desk.
good tip.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so that part of that person's job duties will be to help schedule people. If, you know, if there are bus tours that we know about in advance, let's schedule those. Where do the buses park? So we don't have buses lined up, different places. If schools are wanting to bring kids, let's find the day. So they'll be in charge of trying to make sure that we're on top of all of that scheduling, and there is one person.
Anyone else? Well, like you guys think, to Neil and Brady, thank you for all you guys have done. I know the museum's been kind of an additional job. We've always had these announcements where we think we have an opening date, but there's something that always happens. It's no fault of CIB, it's just, there's always a delay in either agent or a product or a line or something like that. But so, thank you guys for all you've done. Appreciate it. All right, no further questions on that. We'll move on to the Indiana Theater. Mr. Cooper is here with his team from Studio Access, so we'll go through a quick update with them, on where they are at this point, and then have a couple of.
Good morning, everyone. I think I mentioned the board when we first kicked this off, that this would probably be about a 5-month process. So we're in month 3 or getting towards the end of month 3. So I thought, we thought it would be appropriate just to not show up in 5 months and say, ta-da, that's the final act. We thought at this stage, we're, as I mentioned, it's a 3-step process, and we're at the end of step 2. We put a great team together. I just want to remind everybody that it's my studio, Studio Access in Indianapolis. We've got a great theater consultant, theater projects out of Denver. They've got extensive experience in both modern and contemporary theaters, and also oodles of historic theater restorations that they've done. We've got a structural and restoration engineer team called WJE. They've done work around the country and the state. And then RE Diamond, which we're going to look at MEP systems that can support the new use of the theater as well. And they're on our team, and they've done a lot of adaptive use and historic restoration projects as well. As I mentioned, 3-step process. The first step was information gathering. So in that, we kind of kicked things off with the stakeholder meeting. It was an all-day, well, half a day process, but highly successful. I can't remember if we had an average of 18 to 20 people in 3 stakeholder meetings. Got a lot of great information. The other thing that we've done is we've LiDAR scanned the building, so we've got the building in 3D. So not only can we have a Matterport that will allow any one of you to walk through the theater and any of the nooks and crannies, but it allowed us to create a 3D model of the building because existing drawings were just non-existent. We found a few items. We even found our electrical engineer found a book that talks about the wiring. So we've done some extensive research. We've done a lot of historic research. There's been, a lot of you probably know, there's just been a lot of writing on the theater. So we're digging up those articles. We're writing things on our own, and that will eventually work its way into the final report. So our team has been through the building several times. The engineering restoration group came in with a truckload of equipment, and they crawled every part that they could get in the building. So we've analyzed both the exterior and the interior of the building. So that work is done. I just got a report from a 50-page report from them that I've got to incorporate into the final report. that work is done. So, that's what I would call step two. So we're finishing up what I call programming and project definition. And Rob Young, who's with Theater Projects, is going to take most of our time today and just walk you through his observations on the assessment of the unit in the theater. But when I say step two, it's really a step 2A and a step 2B. 2A is kind of the assessment of how we might want to utilize the theater, what recommendations we may have to accomplish that. And then step 2B is just our analysis of the condition of the building, what improvements may happen to not only improve upon its envelope, its exterior and interior, but how it react to some of the new uses of the stuff. And then step 3, which will come back, we're planning to come back in June if that works out for everyone. And we'll have everyone in person. We'll have Rob here, we'll have myself, we'll have the engineers here, and we'll all present kind of the final report in June. So as part of step 3, though, I think probably after walking in on your another important piece of step 3 will be a high level magnitude of costs and where we think the improvements to bring the theater up to where you want to bring it up to, and what those costs could be.
Good job.
Yeah, it's a strange project. We typically, when we do restorations in any design, we usually try to approach it as a good, better, and best approach. In this case, there's parts and pieces that we can approach as a good, better, and best, and then there's just things that have to be done. And I think Rob's gonna, when he presents his assessment on the theater, there's just things that probably have to be done so that the building can perform. So, Kurt, do you know for that?
We are, yes.
Okay.
Let me just make sure we can hear him okay. Me.
Yeah.
So should we do this mic on this one? Okay, Rob, so you can hear us?
He's muted.
Well, we were hoping we wouldn't be falling down.
So what we could do instead is just use my laptop's mic, so just turn off the volume and the mic, your device, and then we can try this. All right, Rob, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
All right, this is gonna be a little bit quiet, but I'll turn this way so you can hopefully all hear just okay. So Rob, I think we're ready for you to take it away with your content here. Let me get the slides switched over the front way. All right, is it possible to make the content bigger up here? Close the audio settings. Possibly go to full screen just so we can see the content here better. All right, Rob, I'd say go ahead and take it away.
Great, I'll jump in. Good morning, everyone. Just want to talk about our trip out there and kind of the information gathering and how that manifests itself into the renewed venue. We framed the conversation when we came out there in a process that I call the 4 Ps. And the first of the 4 Ps is programming. And when I say programming a need, what happens on stage, what you want to present. You can see a whole list of event types and performance types that came out of those meetings. And each one of these event types or performances has requirements or impacts to the architecture, impacts to the technology. So really what you want to present in the venue on stage will greatly inform the architecture and what's needed for each space. You know, for example, movies, you want to prevent movies, there's a technology which is, you know, pretty straightforward in terms of projector and projector screen, but how it affects the architecture is, you know, good viewing in the screen. When do you get too far oblique to the screen? How do you achieve good sight lines for a screen versus a single performer on stage? So it really impacts the architecture. Musical theater, Broadway, for example, obviously an orchestra pit is a big deal for Broadway productions. But if it's a full Broadway production, they like to see, and you know, you would find this information in technical writers that come out in terms of what the requirements and hopes that the venue can do. So a 40-foot stage with 40 feet of rigging is common for many Broadway touring shows. Orchestra concerts, for example, how would we present a symphony orchestra in the space? It could be an orchestra shell, and orchestra concert has wildly different acoustic needs than movies, which are all amplified sound. So that starts to introduce adjustable acoustics into the room. And all of these need certain geometries, certain architecture, and space requirements for the theater. So if we go to the next P, which is patron. When you think about what a patron needs to have a good time in a venue, we discussed a lot of that. And the support spaces for patrons, you know, the easy one is lobbies and restrooms. You can see VIP or just drop-off zone, concessions or food and beverage, adequate seating, box office, lighting, parking. We put a crowd density diagram here just to show one of the big missing pieces. If you did an event with 1,200 people in it, there's not enough current lobby to fit people. So on the small side, we would recommend somewhere around 8 square foot per person. And this visual gives you an idea of what that might look like. So greatly expanded public amenities would be one of the things we would look to try to achieve in a renovated venue. As well as expanded lobbies, some on-site box office, you know, upgraded architectural lighting and house lighting within the room. So quite a few kind of patron amenities we would try to address in any kind of renovated venue. Okay, if we can go to the next, which is performer amenities. And there's a good image on the left-hand side that kind of show existing conditions. There is a lot of program space down in the basement and a lot of room for reconfiguration. There's also program space on what I'm calling the gallery upstage left. And so if you renovated and reconfigured many of these spaces into a green room or a performer's lounge and adequate dressing rooms, you would start to address the amenities that performer needs. And it's different, you know, if it's a touring venue versus if it's a venue that produces its own works or a combination of those. It's also different for a Broadway musical than it is for a symphony orchestra, which might have instrument storage requirements or musician changing areas, which is basically a simplified dressing room. So we would also look to kind of address performer amenities in the renovated venue. Then if we can go to production. Production is both accommodation for technical crew as well as technology. So we would look to kind of incorporate production offices, crew space, improve loading capabilities and loading dock, and then technical systems. Many of the systems in the building are original or, you know, early updates, let's say. So the there has been temporary sound and lighting systems put in throughout the years. And if we are looking to do a venue that does both local productions as well as touring productions, then we would look to upgrade all of the technology, theatrical lighting, AV, rigging, with both permanent systems to support those local productions. And touring shows typically need company switches, so temporary production power. And then we would also look to distribute control for the lighting. So that would kind of address the production requirements and production needs based on the stakeholder interviews and the types of events and programs we're anticipating in the venue.
So I think, that was just a real brief, update on where we're at. I think there'll be more. The report I passed out today has a lot more information. I think it's our goal in the next step, now that we've got an idea of what our deficiencies are and what use we want. I think it's our goal in step 3 to actually apply some, I call it conceptual design, but actually apply some design to the building. So when Rob talks about some of the deficiencies with patron amenities, so the lobby spaces, and where can we find that additional space? I think all of this, I think when we initially talked about the building, especially in the stakeholders, were like, oh, what can we put in storefront spaces, and how can we create some light, not 24/7, but 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock during the week when there aren't theater productions going on. Well, we're starting to find out that we need almost every square foot of that storefront space to expand the lobby space. So we're going to charge ourselves with how can we kind of recreate that space to not only serve as lobby space during a theater event, but could some of that have multi-use so that, from 8 to 5, some of that lobby space could become storefront. So we're going to charge ourselves with that. The challenge to the building for that too, though, is there is space on the second level underneath the seating as well. It's very valuable space. It's got low windows and things like that. Again, we're going to need that space to take on lobby space for the upper seating section of the theater. The challenge with that is that space is not connected to the auditorium. So we're going to look at ways to make that space be accessible from the seating so that that can become patron space as well. Again, looking at how can that be designed to be multi-purpose and used, off hours during and that the convention center can utilize that space or other ways as well. So the challenge to the theater is it's got 3 separate basement spaces. It's got the auditorium that links, the backstage, the performance spaces, and the patron amenity space, but they're not all connected to each other. So that's going to be a challenge from us from not only just accessibility, because that's going to be a big challenge of ours for this project, and part of our solution in the next phase is to solve that. We know that because of that disconnectedness, we're going to have to provide vertical circulation in the form of either lifts or elevators, and it's going to require separate lift systems in each of those sections to make the space fully compliant. So as we identified and programmed and kind of defined where we think we want to go with the project, I think in this step 3, when we come back in June, we'll actually see solutions to some of these solutions and problems that we started to identify. And then hopefully have a pretty good understanding of where the magnitude of cost is something proven. So more of an update, but I think in June it'll be a very graphic, very visual kind of presentation. We're also going to, part of that presentation will be really good graphics, not only 2D floor plans, sections will utilize the model, but I think we'll show some renderings on how some of those patron amenities could be used. So vignettes, like rendering vignettes of the interior. We're talking about replacing seating. I think it would be great to show a new view of how the interior of the auditorium could look with some of the alterations. And then I think the board and other entities could utilize those drawings if you go out to see grants and things like that. You'll have really good narrative package, but also a very good graphic package. We're seeking some of those out.
And then, is there any way we can, I know it's hard to use the word guarantee, but really push that coming out in June? Just because with July and then the Lilly Endowment Fund.
Yeah.
I, as well as many mayors across the state, share the same sentiment of frustration with the recent round of ready awards.
Yeah,
But acknowledge that across the state, there are more opportunities to include the Lilly Endowment Fund coming in July. And there's an emphasis there on arts and culture, specifically theaters.
Yeah.
So if we can all really push for June, I think Chris has done a great job being the main government official, so we'll keep sprinting for June to be that.
yeah, and I know we missed Freddie, but I wasn't sure on the timing of it. So I think,
Yeah,
and again, if we have to even pivot a little bit sooner than June and some of these things.
I would be prepared to, because as we learned last year with the IEC, moving the goalpost seems to be at the top of their definitions.
But that, I think our intent is, to really dig into this building and really find out what, I mean, the bones are really good, but it's 100-year-old building, so of course there's going to be things that have to be, it's gotta be converted into modern uses, so that's a challenge, but, it was my goal to get through that, but also to have really good graphic, information that could be utilized. We do it all the time, and I mean, graphics are, so we hope we can produce the level.
Make sure you include the popcorn stand, favorite stuff. Emphasis there.
Yeah.
So I have a question. What did you hear about programming? Because you said in the listening sessions that we can't do everything.
Yeah.
Because if we try to do everything,
Sure.
can you share a little bit
Yeah, I don't-
about what?
Yeah, I want to see it. Rob, did you hear that question?
Yeah, I did hear that. And, you know, we deal with this all the time. The challenge is you can make a building do almost anything you hear. And it's a delicate balance between what I call multi-purpose and multi-useless. And when you get to a point of multi-useless, it just means you're trying to make the room do too many things and it doesn't do any single one really well. So it's kind of taking the stakeholder wish list and really prioritizing event type, and what the building needs to do to support that event type and be successful. The more you try to make it do everything, the less it does any one of those things well. So it's really a delicate balance. We've done incredibly functional multi-purpose spaces that can do dance, can do theater, can do opera, can do movies, can do symphony performances. But the more you push that, then you start to lose, you know, good acoustics for orchestra might start to diminish the more you push amplified sound. So that's kind of a balance you have to strike between the architecture and the technology to support the events. Does that answer the question?
It does. And so is that, is it a balance decided by what the community needs are or by what the building can accommodate?
I think it's a little bit of both. You know, based on the programming that we've heard, there are certain things that we would just assume inherently in the building that aren't currently there. For example, adjustable acoustics, which often mean banners, fabric banners that deploy on the side walls that provide more absorption to the room. So if you have let's say the Terre Haute Symphony Orchestra becomes a resident company in there and they want to do productions, we would put in an orchestra shell on stage that can be removed so that then you could present Broadway shows. And we would put those adjustable acoustic banners in the room that may be down for movie presentation or down for amplified sound and go out when you're doing a symphony orchestra. So you have a more acoustically live room. So we would just have to gear the technology to support those event types.
Sure. And then we decide whether we are or are not going to make it a wedding venue. That's the question. Okay.
Yeah, so wedding can mean many different things. And, you know, it could be the expanded public amenity space might be lobby slash storefront slash event space, wedding space. You could also make the auditorium function as such, depending on what that actually means in the room, right? The theater is a very viable rental space for many different types of events. And how you address the front end of the room where it transitions from fixed seating into kind of flat floor, that kind of flexible area may support weddings quite well, depending on what you do with it.
Can I ask what you asked specifically about weddings?
Well, because during the, listening sessions, they said, if we try to make it do everything that we taught. And so specifically about weddings, you have to store a lot of tables and chairs, and if there isn't storage for that, and productions and bring in, they have a storage problem. I think it's more of a storage problem and less of a, when we do this event and we get a schedule problem, so. From my process,
So if somebody does have a wedding there, they have to bring their own
it could be,
computers, that type of
it could be, what I experienced in my past life, was a storage issue with this, flipping the room, flipping the building for different types of
Yes.
events.
I think that's a very keen observation, and I'll give you an analogy that we see all the time. When you hear the word flexible, that means two things to me. It means automation and capital costs, or it means labor and operational costs, right? And so you can automate systems like very expensive seats that flip the room from fixed seating to flat floor, lifts that help you move large scenic elements and tables and chairs, versus people doing that work in large storage spaces. And one of the challenges, most venues end up being short on storage space. It's the easiest thing to cut price-wise and architecturally. Oh, let's just get rid of storage. And it does create a burden for the venue. I think two of the things we're looking at with this particular venue is how can we improve the loading dock to make transfer of stuff like that and logistics much easier to get in and out of the theater. And then if we revitalize and redo the orchestra pit lift, then that would be a mechanism to get large amounts of tables and chairs down into the basement. And we're anticipating trying to create storage down there as well.
Yes, I did, Kevin, I didn't see, just in a quick breeze through of your assessment, I didn't see mention of ADA compliance. Is that part of your
Oh, yeah.
evaluation
Yeah,
already?
life safety and accessibility are big. We've done most of that research. Accessibility is going to be the bigger challenge. The venue right now is uber friendly of life exiting, but it's lacking the accessibility. So that's going to be the biggest challenge.
Okay, so I know there's some of us that have to leave around 10:30 today, so I'm gonna try to be really brief here. So for the first time, I believe the media has seen the picture I gave you guys today. That is the design of the new Indiana Theater sign. What you'll notice most is it is nearly identical, except it has LED boards in it instead of actually having to get up on the canopy, install the letters, personally or physically. Everything else, the dimensions, the historic Indiana logo on top of the sign is identical. Everything's identical. What we have done 2 months ago is we have a fully executed contract with Green Sign Company that the Terre Haute Visitor Bureau has so graciously offered to pay for us. What I am doing now is trying to solicit 2 more bids for the roof canopy for us to make a decision next month. Green Sign Company is going to work with either Marcus or somebody within the city for whatever permit they need that the CIB will take care of. And then blocking probably one lane on Ohio Street while they remove the sign. And it will be coming down, probably within the next couple of weeks, I would say. In the meantime, we have to decide if we're gonna fix that canopy or not. I think we have to. I think it's something we do this year and then we drop back and wait for. We obviously know the Indiana Department of Destination is incredibly interested in the theater. We know through Willie that it's a art-specific project that we can receive funding for. The mayor and commissioners have met with RJL Solutions to talk about grant funding or some type of funding for the Indiana theater. So I think our project will line up in the top tier of things that the state of Indiana will invest in. Whether that's the end of this year or the first of next year, I think we have a large sum of money potentially coming to invest in. My goal as kind of the lead on this project is to continue to show progress on the theater. I think a good way of doing that is getting the sign installed later this summer, repairing the roof, which also entails the green sign company is going to replace all the cladding on the exterior of the theater to that bright red that it once was, and change all the LED bulbs underneath and things like that. And although I know it's an electrical bill, it's something that we can certainly light up and have sponsorship opportunities to make some money on the signage and things of that nature. So next month, I hope to we have one bid on the roof canopy right now. It was around the $60,000 range. I'm trying to get a couple more bids with some other contractors. Some contractors have just told me flat out, no, they're not interested in doing it, but at least I'm trying. So I think next month I'll try to work with Mr. Boswell and have some type of resolution to approve or not approve, or if the board chooses on repairing. We talked about the meters, electricity, and water.
Next question.
Sure, yeah.
Sorry. What approximately would the cost will be?
Probably somewhere between 50 to 75,000.
So we had to go through solicitation full process.
Right. I've just been trying to put some feelers out there to see who
Sure.
be potential bidders. Of course, we want that to be local too. The meter discussion on the theater is difficult. That theater is extremely old, and we know over the years that there's been patchwork. Meters installed here, time after time. We have an opportunity to have leasable space on both the 7th Street side and the Ohio Street side. So I've been talking to Duke Energy about trying to bring the meters together, but still trying to find a way to break them up. I don't think that's likely. I don't think it's going to happen. So I think we'll continue to see maybe 3 or 4 different Duke Energy bills. I think the water consumption, if the CIB chooses in the future to just take care of the water, pay that utility for whatever space, or, I mean, however it might work. We'll have to have that discussion later. I think for right now, we do have a project that's a signed contractual project, sign company. We have to. I know there's a couple members of the CIB that's ready for us to send an invoice to get that paid. So, yeah, that's where we're at. So, if anybody wants to help me, Terry, John, I'd be happy to take some help. It's a lot. We're going to work. Thank you, I appreciate that. We're working with Rob to get some of his stuff out of there. I mean, obviously, you know Rob over the theater for years. He's got a lot of stuff in there. We're working on it.
By the way, Rob, I've got kudos to both. Good saying Rob though, because they've given us full access to the facility. So anytime we wanted to get in there.
And then we'll probably see around the $1,500 bill or something like that coming next couple of months. There's a fence, 2 gates that blew down during a windstorm between Indiana Historic Landmarks and the building that keeps people from getting access to the rear part of the stage. We're going to try that. Tommy Butler made it clear he did not want that gate attached to his building anymore, so we'll have to set up posts and put some new fencing up there. We'll have to take care of that too, but it's just odds and ends things, just to keep the building safe and make sure nobody can access it. But the next one, data effective. Anything else? Okay. All right, moving on. Update on legal matters.
Thank you, Mr. President. Most of this past month has been working with Barry and John on corralling our contractors for whatever we're using. Bringing in you're at the tail end of a 6-year complex construction project. That's when all the legal fund tends to happen. So we already mentioned that we'll be working through some issues with the vendors on the allocation of some of the change order costs. One update on Green Sign Company. You gave the president the authority that they're in contract with them. We did. Chris made a determination that the warranty bond was overpriced. It's not really reflected in their bid. They didn't understand what a warranty bid was. Warranty bond was actually. So given the extensive costs for a 3-year warranty bond, he opted to direct that not to be in. And they have a standard 1-year warranty, and then you'll have to have local folks maintain anything. So in the interest of time, I'll leave it there. Answer your questions. Oh, one other thing, I gave, Karen her board book and sent you all updates for the committee assignments, which remain the same. Karen just stepped in to Dick Patterson's position on the buildings, which includes the Indiana new projects, which includes the Indiana Theater. And I'll circulate those all to you. Karen stepped into Dick Patterson's appointment, so it technically expires January of 2025, so it's coming January.
Any questions, Mr. Boswell? No, we'll move on to resolution 2024-4. Brian, you want to explain that a little bit?
Yes, the management agreement with OPG 360 requires an annual independent audit, which was conducted and circulated to all of you. It actually covered both 2023 and the 7-month operating period of 2022. Very clean audit, the resolution receives, acknowledges receipt, approves the audit, which I'm sure OPG 360 would appreciate that.
So the audit was done by Zach Ryder, Worst local company. You guys have those in front of you. It was very clean audit.
That's actually surprising. Like, so congratulations.
You?
You don't know we're not like this. And not have, you know, some notes that there are exceptions in direction.
Thank you.
There were virtually none this year.
Yeah.
So 22, congratulations.
So what we have before us.
I don't know if it was Martel, or Jason and Kyle. When you're surprised, but
Wait, no, it's all in. It's all in.
I know, I think it.
So the resolution just approves, acknowledges receipt, and approves the audit.
Does anybody have any questions about the audit or Neil or Marcel? I'll take a motion to approve 2024-04.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Shackman, second by Mr. Marvel, all in favor by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Good job, Neil and Marcel. Have a good audit.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Boswell?
No, no, sir.
Okay, other business, questions and comments from CIB members? Anything? No. Okay. All right, our next regular board meeting, May 22nd, 2024, right here in this room. I want to make sure as many of you are here because of the prize. So I'll make sure you're here. That's all I can say. All right. We're adjourned.